Welcome to the Illuma Newsroom! New cards! First up in Amber, we've got Bernard, brand new agent, a 1/5/2 lore for 4 with at end of turn. If he's exerted, you may ready another character. So this seems a little slow. Not only do you not get the ability to use the readied character to sing your challenge since it's at end of turn, but you have to wait for Bernard to become exerted. I think best case scenario is him getting pulled out by a Mufasa death, but usually you'd prefer something more high octane out of that. Maybe this will get a binding contract deck started, but I doubt it. We also get his co-agent, Miss Bianca, Rescue Aid Society agent, who is a carbon copy of Sebastian. No one plays Sebastian, and I don't think anyone's going to play Miss Bianca either, unfortunately. More promising is the debut of Pluto, Friendly Pooch, a 0/2/1 lore for 1 uninkable, whom you can exert to reduce the cost of a character by 1 ink. This is a pretty sweet 1-drop, letting you get out a 3-drop on turn 2, which honestly you'd probably hope to be Doc. Then if Pluto survives one more turn, you could get Mufasa out on turn 3, which is an insane thing to consider. Sure, he's vulnerable, but given that he's a 1-drop and no one runs Fire the Cannons anymore, I think he's pretty safe. Pluto also gets a Floodborn, Determined Defender, a 3/8/2 lore for 7, shift 5 with Bodyguard, and at the start of your turn remove up to 3 damage from him. This is honestly pretty sweet. 8 willpower is pretty hard to get through, and he also heals himself every turn if he's not fully dealt with, letting him shrug off chip damage. The best part is you can shift him onto a friendly pooch that you've already exerted to reduce his cost, meaning that if you used Friendly Pooch to drop Doc on turn 2, you could have Defender protecting Doc on turn 3. That is pretty insane, and I think both Plutos are going to see a lot of play. Next up is Queen of Hearts, Wonderland Empress, a 3/3/1 lore for 3 with when she quests, your other villains get an extra lore pip. So if you've managed to play a villain for your 1 and 2 drops and they all survive to round 4, she effectively quests for 3. That's not bad, though she does require some setup. If an Oops All Villains deck can work effectively for you to want to run Wonderland Empress, then King of Olympus might actually start seeing play. However, with Be Prepared and Grab Your Sword still very present, wide boards are going to be pretty tough to get going. Maybe in an Amber Emerald villain discard deck? Next we have an item, Cleansing Rainwater, at 2 ink, which can be banished to remove 2 damage from all your characters. That's not the worst thing, but I doubt it will see play outside of a Maurice Grandpappy deck, which I'm honestly still trying to make happen with mixed results. Our final Amber card is Tiana's Palace, Jazz Restaurant, a 2/8/1 lore location for 3 uninkable with your characters here can't be challenged. That's kind of nuts, effectively forcing your opponents to get through an 8 willpower Bodyguard before they can deal with your characters. I'm really hoping we get a way to decrease move costs though, because they seem like they can get pretty steep. Moving to Amethyst, we get Diablo, Faithful Familiar, a 2/1/1 lore for 1 with when you play a Maleficent, you may look at the top card of your deck and put it back on top or on the bottom. I hope this means we're getting a 2-drop Maleficent, because that would be pretty sweet in combination with this. Next up is Hydros, Ice Titan, a 2/2/2 lore for 3 that can be exerted to exert an opposing character. So a variation of Elsa Snow Queen, who currently sees 0 play, and this guy is even easier to get rid of, so I don't see a world where Hydros is run in a deck. More playable is Iago Pretty Polly, who is the Amethyst Never Landing, getting this stat line into all 3 evasive colors. Peter and Fidget both see play, and I'm sure Iago will as well. Moving to actions, we get Bestow a Gift, which for 1 ink lets you move a damage counter from one of your characters to an opposing character. That doesn't seem bad at all, giving Amethyst a direct damage option with some setup. The Amethyst Ruby deck already runs Teeth and Ambitions, and rush characters are naturally going to take damage while doing their job, so this could be a great way to finish something off. More worrying is The Boss is on a Roll, a 3-cost song that lets you look at the top 5 cards of your deck, put them back on top or on the bottom in any configuration, and then gain 1 lore. See, that last clause turns this from an interesting scrying spell into a lore gain card with a side benefit. I don't really like Amethyst's ink identity being free lore, because the core principle of this game is that you win by questing, and any lore gain that circumvents that better feel earned, otherwise it's just not gonna feel good. Sleepy's Flute requires a specific song-filled deck, Shere Khan requires challenges, which you can try to avoid, and Grandpappy and Pack Tactics require damaged characters on either side of the board, which you can also try to avoid. This is just like Goat and Sorcerer's Spellbook, lore you get just by spending ink that your opponent cannot stop you from having. This is why the Amethyst Ruby deck is so dominant. You draw the cards, you have removal for days, and you can get out of a stalemate with another control deck by just paying ink for lore without needing to quest. I really hope the other colors get some non-quest lore gain, or even just more prominent lore stealing. 99 Puppies is a good start, but it requires characters on the boards, which can be hard to maintain in the face of Be Prepared and Grab Your Sword. Let's move along to Emerald. Cursed Merfolk is a 0/1/2 lore for 1 uninkable with, when challenged, each opponent discards a card. So this is pretty sweet, essentially a smaller charming rogue. The one thing dragging it down is there is a lot of non-challenge removal around, but in an aggro deck, your opponent just might not be able to keep up with it. This will likely see play. Next is Dawn Carnage, Pirate Prince, a 4/4/2 lore for 5 with evasive. This is just tick your wonderful thing for 1 less ink. I am very confused how Lorcana has such massive power creep before it's even a year old. This guy is an auto-include in any evasive deck and is just going to replace Goofy Daredevil in the Emerald Ruby version because he's just strictly better. The only downside is him dying to a Sword of Truth since he's a villain, but no one runs that card. Who are we kidding? Then we have Robin Hood Daydreamer, a 4/5/4 lore for 6. That is a hunk of lore right there, and pretty survivable stats too. I can see decks trying to run him. Heck, we might even see someone try a disguised peddler deck now with so many 4 lore options to discard. Rounding out this ink color is Shenzi Pack Leader, a 0/6/1 lore for 4 with while she's at a location she gets +3 strength, and if she's at a location when she challenges you may draw a card. So clearly she only works in a deck with locations, but in those decks I think she's an auto-include. That is quite a value engine and not the worst stats for her cost either. The only trick will be making sure your opponent leaves targets open for you to challenge. Over in Ruby we have Scroop Backstabber, a 2/5/2 lore for 5 with when he's damaged he gets +3 strength. This is just card soldiers with extra steps. The only world in which this sees play is a deck with pirate and or alien and or villain payoff. Granted, we still have more than half the set to see, so we might get some of that. The other new Ruby card is Voyage, a 1 ink action that lets you move up to 2 characters to the same location. Now that's not bad, especially for locations with high move costs like Tiana's Palace. We'll still have to see the rest of the set to make a judgment call, but this looks promising. In Sapphire, we get Rufus Orphanage Cat, a 4/5/1 lore for 5, who, when he dies, can be put into your inkwell. So, Chonky Grammatala. Honestly, given that he's inkable, I could see him seeing play, unlike James. I think he'll be particularly good in draft, but he seems a decent way to try to get to 10 ink for strange but special. We of course have a new Sapphire item, Scrooge's Top Hat, a 2 ink uninkable item that you can exert to make an item cost 1 less ink. Finally, we have the item version of the lantern, and clearly it's intended to get you to the lucky dime faster. The one issue is Sapphire is already the ink color of ramping, so there's usually no reason to run this over one jump ahead, unless you're really trying to go deep on item synergy with tamatoa and whatnot, but even then, the top hat isn't going to help you get out tamatoa. More interesting is Vault Door, a 4 ink item that gives your locations and characters at locations resist +1. This is already quite nice, but remember, you can have up to 4 of these. Think about it, resist +4. And if they're at Maui's Place of Exile, that's +5. Insane. I think this is going to be a must in any Sapphire location deck. Speaking of locations, Bell's House Maurice's Workshop, a 2/6/0 lore for 1 with if there's a character here, your items cost 1 less. So first off, I don't like that the subtitle is already the name of a card, but also this just seems like too much of a hassle, especially since the effect doesn't stack and it doesn't give you any lore. You need to pay at least 3 to get this discount, and wait, you could have just spent that 3 on Mickey Detective and gotten the extra ink and a character that can quest. Now, if you're playing a lot of items, like with Maurice or his Workshop, this could have some value, but it just seems like way too much investment in a deck that already already requires a lot of setup to make work. Moving to steel, we get Kita Royal Warrior, a color-shifted Simba protective cub. Now, Simba is mainly good because he can protect Lilo and other 1-drops, but this is still a great card. You could now make an Amber Steel aggro deck with twice the Simbas, though still only 4 Lilos, unfortunately. Maybe Steel will get a 2-lore 1-drop this set? Next is Lithos, a 4/1 1-lore for 4 with resist +2, and you can exert him to give a character resist +2. I like this guy. We've already seen that resist characters are real hard to deal with. What's funny is he can give resist to himself. Imagine questing with him, then readying him with LeFou or something, and having him get himself to resist +4. Nutty. We got several Steel actions revealed this week, starting with Baboom, which for 2 ink deals 2 damage to a character or location. Not too shabby, the ink ability is very nice, which I think is the main reason why Fire the Cannons has stopped seeing play. The trick will be finding room for it. Next is Olympus Would Be That Way, which for 1 gives all your characters +3 strength when challenging a location. This is very much a tech card that I think will only see play if locations see lots of play. Speaking of location hate, Rise of the Titans, a 3 ink action that banishes an item or a location. So this is the first time we've seen hard removal of locations. If no one is really playing locations, this will see no play because no one is playing Break and this costs more. If there is a lot of location play, this will likely see play as a tech card, but probably not a 4 of. Man, I really want to start playing with locations to see how well they work in practice because so much of this right now is just guessing. We do get a new location, Nottingham, Prince John's Castle, which is a replica Forbidden Mountain Maleficent's castle. I still have nothing to say about this, it's vanilla. Far more interesting is Map of Treasure Planet, a 3 ink item with exert to pay 1 less for a location, and as a passive bonus it costs 1 less to move to locations. This is a spicy meatball, and I think this is going to be an auto-include in any Steel deck focused on locations. Whether or not such a deck is actually any good, I think will depend on what the last Steel location is, because the ones we've seen so far aren't particularly inspiring, honestly. That's been a lot this week. Get in the comments and let me know which of these newly revealed cards you're most excited to try out.